Hello everyone and welcome to the Anime Zillia, and today we're going to be talking about episode 20 of the Doctor Stone anime series. And we begin with the confirmation that the best weapon in this battle between Tsukasa and Senku is in fact communication. As Homura is watching Senku, and obviously the information that Homura will be giving Tsukasa and Hyoga will be delayed because of the distance between them. And Tsukasa is even kind of not worried about Yuzuriha and Taiju at this point. Whether or not they're spies, he just doesn't care, because he knows that Senku can't communicate, or they can't communicate with Senku at this moment in time. And I love the fact that they kind of have Hyoga basically saying, communication is a prophet of science, and yet that is the most powerful weapon in this day and age. How interesting. And we get the fact that we know when the battle is going to start. The deadline is spring. So once the snow clears and melts away, Tsukasa will have enough manpower to basically annihilate the village. They know the village can't run away in the winter because the lake freezes because they're surrounded by a giant lake. And this just all goes to the fact that communication is in fact the most powerful weapon at this moment in time within the show. So Senku wanting to make phones is actually a really smart play. And I do like the fact that they open up by telling us just that. Next, we have to start with the process of making phones. As Senku explains to the group how they actually work. Now, they do make a running joke with Gen, and he's like, this conversation requires a high IQ level. And then he drops, it goes back up, it drops. And it's just, that was okay, I suppose. But it was a bit worn out by the second or third time they did it. However, this conversation leads us to cotton candy. And they have to try and make the machine so they can spin melted sugar in order to catch the strands that come off from it once it cools down, in order to create like a cotton string-like substance, which obviously we call cotton candy. And obviously this is so that they can do a trial and error to make sure it works before actually trying with gold. Because the main item that they want to do this with is in fact gold itself, which is a very valuable, precious resource. And if they mess up, which luckily for them, they do mess up with the cotton candy slightly, so it's lucky that they did that. And if they mess up with gold, then it's going to be a very, very expensive process and time-consuming process to basically rectify that problem. Now, we get this weird scene of the... what was I going to say? We get this weird scene of everybody wanting to try the cotton candy. And they all try it, and their reactions are like this. Honestly, it makes me laugh whenever I see the former village chief's reaction. I just think it's funny. But it reminds me of something out of Food Wars, except this time the clothes actually stay on, and well, that's a pretty good thing. Considering they showed everyone that's important to the village trying this. But I would say the reaction was pretty good, over the top, but it was still quite funny and I enjoyed the expressions. Even Magma and his underling, which I absolutely despise at the moment in this series, even he has a goofy reaction and actually wants to try it. Now, how do they make cotton candy? How do they get this sugar? Well, it's actually thanks to Homura, because Homura basically set the village on fire, which basically burned all the wine, or most of it anyway. And since this wine was boiling pretty much for a very, very long time, this crystallized and turned into sugar crystals, therefore giving us the key ingredient that we actually need in order to make cotton candy. So the enemy is actually helping out, and that's actually really convenient for them, but not very convenient for the opposition. And when I say Homura is spying on the village, she literally is just sat in a tree looking down from a high vantage point. So there's that. Right then, so basically, I said the fact that they have a problem with weaving cotton candy, and it's a good thing they use sugar to make cotton candy instead of just going straight in for gold. Well, that is because when they were using their machine, the rope that they were using and pulling on to make the device spin around actually kept slipping. Therefore, they had to try and fix that problem. And they managed to do so, and thus gears are introduced into the show. We actually get to see gears work in this show, and it's pretty simple. It's like a little box, and you just spin it around, and it clicks, spins everything around that way. It works like a gyro type of system, much like a sprocket would on a bike. So, much like a sprocket would on a bike. And this was a very clever way of doing so. And it actually brought up an idea in Chrome's mind. Which Chrome for me was actually a great character in this episode, but I'll get more on that in a minute. So, one of the main things that Senku was lacking in the first kind of big science project we saw him doing, which was a drug, sulfur drug, is in fact manpower, and weaving gold requires a lot of it. However, he's the village chief now, so obviously he's got access to that, but they do have winter coming up, so they have to divide their forces. Which is understandable, but it's, it's very convenient, and they do like making it into a joke that Senku is now the village chief, so manpower isn't a problem. Which by the end of this episode, manpower is pretty much non-existent. So, we actually get this good shot of all the villagers helping out weaving this gold. Not gonna lie, looks like spaghetti, but that's for another time. And I love the fact that everyone is helping out, and the whole village is getting involved. This basically shows us that, Senku is in control, they listen to him, they want to understand him. Okay, he probably bribed them with cotton candy and ramen, but he's still being a decent leader involving everyone. Even the elderly have got their own jobs and are being, responsible for fulfilling the tasks that they're doing. Which, one thing I found really good about the sulfur drug creation was the fact that it felt like a team effort. When we see all this and we see the whole village pitching in, it really does give me that vibe yet again, which I can really appreciate. Meanwhile, we get this. Just look at this reaction from this character of Kenzaki. I think that's his name? Kenzaki? Kensugi? Kenzaki? Anyway, calling him Kenzaki for this. And basically, him and Chrome has a good idea. He tells him, and he just explodes with excitement. Like, it blasts everybody away. It's over the top, it's dramatic, it's really fun. It's great. And they start going off to create what we don't know yet, but it turns out to be a water wheel. And this obviously comes from Chrome with his after seeing the gears in action, thinking that they could do this and get one up on Senku. Now, I'll come back to the water wheel in just a second. However, Homura doesn't actually do anything in this episode apart from slowly trusting Senku, but I doubt that she's going to turn, in my personal opinion. She's the cotton candy that he leaves out for him, which actually, it does bring on some beautiful animation and art style. So I'll give her credit for that, she managed to do that. But the scene with her in, apart from being wonderfully animated, it really wasn't anything to kind of talk about. It was just there, just to fill space, I reckon. Show us how much time has passed. And in fact, for this episode, 3 days were in fact passed in total. We know that because Chrome came back and said he stayed up for 3 nights and then 3 days working on his little secret project. So then we get the reveal that the water wheel is actually what they were creating. Senku is pretty much surprised and is happy and grateful, and he decides to do some improvements. Which, after these improvements, he states that we're no longer in the age of manpower. We're now ready to use we're ready to use nature in its finest aspect, thus giving us hydro power, meaning they can use electricity on a lot larger scale using hydroelectric power. This is great for Chrome's character because it shows him being smart and learning from Senku. He's seeing and taking in everything that Senku is teaching him, and he's developing it and basically improving upon it. Which he doesn't actually know anything about this water wheel before doing so. Yes, they know about memes in there from the 100 Tales, but they don't actually know about like sort of the gadgets and gizmos that scientists used to use. So I thought that was really great. So we now have electric. So we could probably have lots of lighting, lots of good ways. We could heat up a lot easier. So it shouldn't make making smartphones, which is actually not going to be smart, it's just going to be a normal phone, but it should make it a lot easier. Now let's talk about Kanzaki for this episode. Mind the, don't worry about the working hard thing at the bottom, but this character for me was absolutely brilliant. With his over-the-top reactions and his stripping to show excitement and just the whole kind of enthusiasm he brought with himself for this episode. Like when he heard about the excitement thing on phones and that, he was so jolly, so happy that he couldn't contain himself. I thought that was brilliant. So there are 3 characters from this episode that are highlights for me personally. There were Kanzaki, which obviously you know the reason why, I just love his excitement, his reactions. Chrome, for his great ideas and his abilities and showing us that he's actually learning and improving. I love to see character development from shows and characters, and seeing Chrome develop this way just does great jobs, in my opinion. And then the last one is Gen himself, with his insight to I haven't actually got it. I thought I had it. 2 seconds. So Gen and his insight into Tsukasa's mind. He's asked to basically pretend he is Tsukasa in order to kind of predict when they're going to attack, and he just kind of morphs. You see him morph slowly into the role and looking like Tsukasa in that way. And the way that he talks and projects, brilliant. He has some good sarcastic humour in this episode, which worked really nicely. All in all, Gen was just a good character. So overall, I found this episode to be pretty good. I actually really enjoyed it. But we don't get a lot of progression in terms of getting towards the smartphones, or the phones in general. So I'm hoping we don't get any rush steps in the future, because I like to see the process of them doing it. Last time I did a review, I said I would like it to be the case where they actually have the things working and set up, ready to go into battle, and then end the season there. Then the start of the next season, we actually see the battle to start with to get us involved and enticed to it. So I hope that's the way they go. I just hope that they don't get to the last episode and feel like, right, we have to do this battle. Quickly, let's do it. But, you know, we never know. Anyway, with all that said and done, I really enjoyed this episode. I hope you guys did too. If you've enjoyed this review, make sure you press like, dislike if you didn't, subscribe if you're new so you never miss a video from me, and until next time, I hope you'll have an amazing day, and I'll be catching you all later. Bye bye for now.